We have Jerry Hunt back. You might have seen her in the previous conversation. And then we also have Steph here, and she's from Safety Compass. And so we're going to talk about a topic that is difficult to talk about, but it's also necessary. And so we are just going to dive in here. And let's start by, Jerry, you just sharing your title and your just briefly about your role again at Samanka Place.
Sure. So my name is Jerry Hunt, and I am the Restorative Services Manager at Samanka Place. So I oversee the Restorative Services programs, which is the women who come in with children, the women who are employed or employable, and those in supportive services, which are aging, disability, some mental illness, really domestic violence, trafficking, kind of all of those groups, those that aren't in our New Life Fellowship program.
Yeah. Okay. And Steph.
So I work for Safety Compass. We are a community-based nonprofit, and we serve survivors of human trafficking, both labor and sex, and survivors of commercial sexual exploitation. While I'm employed by Safety Compass, I represent the Human Trafficking Task Force for Marion County, and I coordinate the services with our community partners, law enforcement, medical, DHS, child welfare, all of those things. So.
Hey, can you share with us, Steph, a little bit about the mission and the purpose of Safety Compass, but also the task force that you just mentioned?
Yeah, so the mission of Safety Compass is to give culturally appropriate, and by culture I mean the subculture of people who are in the sex industry and in trafficking, services to survivors of survivors of trafficking, and sort of meet them wherever they're at and help them work through the stages of change to get to stabilization, to get into a more stable place in life, so that they're not engaged in their trafficker, they're not, if they don't want to be engaging in sexual exploitation and trafficking. And so the task force is organized by the DOJ, and its goal is to cooperate with all of the community partners that are appropriate. So like I said, law enforcement, medical, DHS, child welfare, Center for Open Safety, Samanka's Place, all of those different things, and see how we can combine our efforts to fight the issue of trafficking in the state of Oregon.
And can you, I think it's a term, human trafficking, sex trafficking, that most people have heard, of course, but can you define that term for us? Because I think a lot of people might have questions about what defines human trafficking.
Sure. So, oh gosh, I should have just memorized the ORS before I came in. But so it's any. We'll talk about sex trafficking. Labor trafficking is a little bit different, but any sexual act that is for commercial, for amount of money, that happens because of force, fraud, or coercion, and that's for adults. For a minor, anyone under the age of 18, the force, fraud, or coercion doesn't have to exist. It's any commercialized sex act, and we know that typically that those sex acts and the commercial aspect of it goes to a third party. It doesn't go to the person performing the acts, and so that's how it's trafficking. It's going to somebody else. So.
Okay. And so obviously this affects many different people. Understand this is not something that affects just people who are homeless, but can you, both of you, talk a little bit about where human trafficking or sex trafficking might intersect with people who are in shelter?
Absolutely. The homeless population, and this is true of male and female unhoused people, and when we say commercialized, people often think of money, but it's really any good or service or anything like that, anything that could be considered commercialized. So a lot of times the unhoused they have very little to trade, and so they will use their bodies. They'll use sex acts to get a place to sleep, a car to stay in, a tent to stay in, food or drugs or anything else, any way to meet their needs. And a lot of times sex is the only thing that they have to offer. Jerry, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would echo that as well, that we do think of that in terms of money, but really in our homeless houseless population, there's a greater preponderance of trafficking because of the needs that they have, just the need for shelter, the need for safety. And so sometimes they are having to trade those things just to get their basic needs met.
Yep.
How common is it? I mean, I know you're just making a logical guess, very possibly here, but how common is it for us at UGM to see people pass through our doors who you find out has had this experience?
Right. Well, I would say it's hard to put a number on it, but in the last 3 months, I have worked with 3 individuals who have had an element of trafficking, and so we've actually connected and partnered together to be able to support those women that have come in. So it's not someone that we work with every day, but we definitely have. There seems to be an increase lately, or maybe we're just more aware of it sometimes. They don't always disclose, and so, in fact, they often don't disclose.
Yes.
Trafficking, and so we might learn that through conversations with them.
Well, and part of that, I would say it's fairly ubiquitous, actually, in the unhoused population. And with the self-disclosure, a lot of times they wouldn't label it trafficking. They're not going to use necessarily the same terms that we would use when they're talking about it. If you break it down, you don't ask someone like, were you trafficked or something like that. You would say, hey, like, how are you getting your needs met? How did you find a place to stay? How did you get this spot in this car? And then they'll disclose, well, I had to do what I had to do. And if you have the conversations in that manner, you'll find a lot more. That it's actually extremely common. So.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. How often does Samanka Place and Safety Compass work together, collaborate, partner, refer, whatever that might look like?
In the last year? Quite a bit.
Quite a bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
It kind of ebbs and flows, but Jerry knows that she can call us and make it a referral if she has someone who she believes might have been experienced trafficking at some point in their life, and if we have someone that we feel like would be a good fit and needs a place to go to stay safe, then we will call Jerry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So practically speaking, how does Safety Compass help people?
So, like I said, we're community based, and so we work entirely in the field. And so, if someplace we have a 24-hour response to emergency rooms, law enforcement, child welfare, and the juvenile departments. And so, if they come across somebody who has we used to say red flags, and now we see indicators, but it's the same thing. If they have certain indications that trafficking could be an element of their experience, they'll call us out, and we'll send one of our on-call advocates to meet with them, and just talk with them, see where they're at, see what's going on, and see what resources do they need. If they're in the juvenile department, they're locked up, and so they don't need housing. But wherever they're at, do they need clothing? Do they need just emotional support? Are they currently with a trafficker, and do they need just some motivational interviewing to sort of help them move through the stages of change, excuse me. And then what resources can we connect them with to help them stabilize and help them get safe?
Okay. What are there any misunderstandings by our society about human trafficking that you feel like are important to address?
Yeah.
Okay, what
Yes,
might
there
those
are.
be?
I think a lot of people have this picture of trafficking victims that they are, that somehow it involves kidnapping or smuggling. And those crimes are real, and they're all completely separate. Human smuggling is not the same as human trafficking. 5% of people who are trafficked were kidnapped in some fashion or forced to come with them. Most trafficking is domestic. Well, most trafficking that we deal with is domestic. There's a lot of non-domestic trafficking, but the people that we end up interfacing with, it's typically domestic. 25% in Marion County is familial, so it's done by a parent or a relative. And most of the people that are in a trafficking situation are not asking for help. And so to interface with them and to get our services to them, we have to be very assertive and go out into the community, into where they are, and talk to them and see where they're at. They're not going to come to us asking for help.
Okay. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Jerry?
I would just say that very similar. We even when they're coming into shelter, very rarely do they disclose. Very rarely do they talk about that piece of it. And when we partner together, we're looking for how can we meet their needs immediately. And sometimes for us, that's in that shelter piece, where Safety Compass can hotel them for a night or two. Really, they're looking for who can we partner with that can shelter them while they still work alongside. And so we work together, we continue to work together and get all the appropriate ROIs, release of information, and so that we can best support that client and maybe shelter at Simonka Place is the best place for them, and maybe that's a temporary, and we need to get them into a more protective shelter, something that's confidential, or something that is going to be able to help those needs going forward.
Yeah.
This appears to be such an unknown issue. It seems kind of underground, out of sight. I didn't ask you to bring any numbers, so of course, if you can't recall anything,
I'll do my best.
exactly, yeah, you can do your best. But I mean, for example, in 2024 or so, or typically, over the last several years, about how many cases does Safety Compass deal with within a year's time? For example, just to kind of give us an idea of, I guess,
So
the issue.
2024, Safety Compass served, and this is over 4 counties. I think it's 565. Marion County had 126 of those. Marion County was roughly 70% minors and 30%. And do not hold me to these numbers because I'm
Disclaimer.
recalling the best I possibly can.
Yeah, we're giving
We're giving some ballparks here. I know that since 2018, we served 1,265 people total, and it's pretty evenly divided between adults and minors. Most of those were female or female identifying, but we definitely are seeing, especially right now, we're seeing an increase in male and male identifying people being served as well. That is not representative of the population that are being affected. That's just representative of what's being reported and what we're able to serve. Obviously, if we, we're only serving the referrals that we get. And so we know that, while we're very proud of the numbers, we're proud of the people, how many people we've served. We have one advocate in Marion County. We also know that it's a drop in the bucket of what's out there. So.
Yeah. Okay. So of course, without sharing any names or any, identifiers, is there a story of success that you would like to share?
Well, again, like we talked about even in our last segment, success is different for everyone. And I would say, even just, we don't always see the end result, but success for this week was just that this individual, this woman that we were serving, that we partnered together with, in those few days that she was with us, that we were able to give her support. We were able to care for her and help her to feel valued and seen and heard and safe. And so just even as she was transitioning to another shelter, we could see that in that time, that short time that we had been able to spend with her, we could see that she did feel valued, she did feel seen, and she did feel heard, and she felt very safe. And so that's a success, I think, because I don't know when she felt safe last. So just those little things, even sometimes we put success way up here, but it's just those little daily things too. That's a success, getting her out of, removing her from a situation. And I don't even know what all of that looked like, but removing her from a situation where she was unsafe.
100%. So I think at the end of the day, the goal is to whatever skills, whatever referrals you make, whatever things you get people connected to, do they feel seen? Do they feel loved? And I think that love is the most important thing that you can communicate to somebody, and the most effective thing you can do to help someone make a life change. And so I know we're probably running short on time, but so there was one little gal I worked with. I got the referral from a police department, and I started meeting her at her middle school. And she's pretty deep in the life at that point, and I met with her pretty regularly. Eventually she took off on the run, came back a couple of times, and one of the times she came back, I met her at school, and she told me a story of how she had tried to commit suicide the day before, and we walked through suicide prevention, called the suicide hotline, did all the things, I just told her how valuable she was, and anyhow, she took off again, And the next time she came back, she called me. Like, I didn't have to reach out to her. She called me, and she said she wanted to talk, and she was ready to make a police report. So she left her trafficker that day, and she told me that he had been very abusive towards her, and she told me that she was lying on his bed and realizing, like, all the things that were happening and how terrible she felt. And, like, when she had attempted months ago, that I'd seen the day after, he had laughed at her, and then she saw me the next day, and I had told her that I loved her, and she's like, that was the thing that made the difference. She was like, I knew that somewhere there was somebody that actually valued me, and it wasn't him. And she left him for that and made a police report and never went back, and now he's in jail. And so to me, like, whatever she goes on and does for the rest of her life, she truly felt seen and valued by a human. And then, so to me, that's a huge success.
Yeah, of course, we're all reading from different dictionaries when we talk about success. And maybe a better word would be a victory, a step forward. Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
I think I just wanted to highlight as well, just in this last situation that we had worked together with, I think of like all the different women, the different people that this client had worked with, that I think there were at least 3 from Safety Compass that had some
Yes.
part in that, whether it's translation, whether it's meeting her at the airport and traveling with her, whether it's communicating before that, and then coming into Simonka Place and meeting with myself and our team, and then going to her next location, and just that each person that she was with just took that time to just, what are her needs? What do you need? What can we support you in right now, right in the here and now? And I just think I love how we can all work together for the benefit of these women or of these individuals.
Yeah, I do too.
Sharing that.
Yeah, that's really good.
That's important.
Yes.
Before we end today, is there anything else that you believe is important to be conveyed today?
Just that regardless of someone's situation, there's always hope. There's always some way that you can make them feel valued, something of value you can give them, something of value you can say to them. And so you should never look at someone and think, well, that's hopeless. Like, I'm not going to try. That looks way too hard. Like, there's always something you can do to help give them a little bit of hope. So,
And I think that also that you might just be one piece of the puzzle, one piece of their story, and you might not get to see the end result, but you get to be a part of their story and speak into that, and all of that leads to greater success and that safety and feeling loved.
Thank you for sharing that too.
Yeah.
So, if people want to expand their knowledge about Safety Compass, where would be the best place to direct them?
safetycompass.org. Yes, safetycompass.org is our website. I have nothing to do with the website. I'm not techie, but it's pretty expansive. You can make referrals on there. You can sort of see what we've been up to. There's some webinars and things like that you can do for education. And then you can just call our main line. It's 971-235-0021 for any questions or anything you might need to get from it. So.
Okay. Yeah.